this morning. Glad it's not raining. A couple of things before we start. Just out to my left, your right, is the fire exit and the bathrooms, should you need them. There is a photographer here, so if you do not want to be in a photograph, please just do let him know up front. Just let us know. We're also standing here because we're live streaming this event, so if you are coming to speak, if you could stand in line with this chair, that would be really helpful, and this will be filmed for later. Obviously, we are still going ahead with the event despite the mask, so if you could be as COVID compliant as possible, that would be splendid. I'm now going to introduce Dr. Richard Walley, who's been a long-time collaborator with the Department of Communities and particularly pertinent for this event, has helped with us developing the appropriate cultural language for this building. So, Dr. Walley, would you like to come and do the welcome to country? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. Kaya wanju ngara jep junang renak ngara juning yang wali alap wajak buja ngara mot buja bija wadang buja kaya mamang junang ngara wangin kari jun wangin kungku kari jun wangin kaya peruan renak ame wangin tiap ngani wangin mamang junang ngara kaya peruan renak mot kul renak kalak renak buja renak mot mamang junang ngara kaya. May the good spirit keep us all safe here. This is the Wajak section of the Nyungar language group, traditionally known as Waliana. It's a place where the river meets the ocean. It's a place of learning, a place of sharing, a place of stories. It's a place where we have been sharing food and drink for some 2,000 generations. So this morning, when we're participating in this social event of sharing food and drink before we go into the formal event, we are connecting into an activity that's been taking place for thousands of years. So when this is completed, may the good spirit take each and every one of you safely back home to your families. Normally we'd do a song and we'd do dance and didgeridoos and the whole lot. The COVID part, we keep it just to the language and pay respect to the present as well as the past when we open up the portals to our ancestry, but we also pay respect to the protocols of today of keeping everyone safe. The Mama Jinangara, may the good spirit be with us.
Thank you, Dr. Walley. So given that this is the launch of the partnership framework, it's entirely fitting that the next two presenters are co-delivering. So we have the Director General, Michelle Andrews, and CEO of WACOS, Louise Giolito.
You go first, I'll keep my mask on.
Kaya, and welcome to our Wellbeing office, and just delighted to be standing here in front of you today. Partnership needs to be in our DNA, Department of Communities. When it was formed in 2017, it has to be how we do our business, how our mindset we bring to every challenge, every task, every project, every program, whether it's the smallest job, whether it's the 10-year wicked problem. Can I thank Dr. Richard Walley in terms of partnership? When we moved to this building last year, he partnered with us on that journey to move from our office in East Perth and all that that represented to us, some of the burden that we carried with us at that time, and developed a beautiful, like a song line for our staff to think about that journey from East Perth to here through a cultural lens, to see that path through different eyes, and to come here a different and better organisation. So the partnership that we have with Dr. Walley, the partnership we have with the ACOs, the Aboriginal organisations we work with, and then the partnerships that we have across the community services sector, across all of government, are just fundamental to who we are and for why we exist, the business that we're in. What we learned last year in COVID, as we had to step up very quickly and work differently, as we saw this pandemic heading towards us, was that partnerships are a thing that have to be grounded in some really important principles, and you need to build systems to support it. as we tried to activate our partnerships at the beginning of last year. It was hard, it was challenging. We learnt lots of lessons through it, and we've stepped out of last year into this year, wanting to, as I said, build this into our DNA. How do we support our staff every day to make this just a way of working that they hardly even need to think about? So we set up a roundtable group, and Louise and I co-chair that. We've just come from a meeting of that. And then this framework, the launching of this framework and all the work that's already underway in that is there to support all of us to be better, more effective in the work that we do. So, as Dr. Wally said, this morning is really about launching that framework, sharing some discussion, celebrating the relationships that we have, all of which need to be grounded in trust and confidence in each other. So thanks for coming along this morning. Over to Louise.
Hi, morning everyone. I'd also like to acknowledge the land in which we're meeting on, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and recognise this land has never been ceded, always was and always will be. And a big thank you for Michelle for giving me this opportunity to actually speak as well. And as Michelle has said, we've just come from a partnership meeting, which is a roundtable, which is ongoing, and the work that we're doing, and a link between the Peaks and Michelle and some senior management. And it was a really good meeting today, and a lot discussed, and we've really identified some key projects that we want to work on together in partnership. I really want to praise Michelle. She is absolutely committed. You can see through her consultation mechanisms have really drastically changed, and especially in the Aboriginal space and some of the groups that you've actually developed in that particular space, and also the partnership roundtable that you've actually established with the Peaks, which is a really good first step. WACOS is extremely supportive of this framework. We're really, really supportive, but like many of you in this room, we could all write a policy, procedure and a framework. Now it's the challenge about how we actually implement it. And that's the challenging part. That's the challenge for the Department of Communities and for us around its implementation, because we all want the same thing. And Michelle and I have been having this conversation recently. We have different masters, so to speak, of people we have to serve. Myself as a peak, I have to serve my members. But ultimately, it's about the vulnerable people in the community. The Department of Communities has to serve the government of the day and what their agenda is of the day, but they're also having to, provide services to those who are most vulnerable in the community. Embedded in this framework is the absolute belief together, the commonality of actually helping and supporting and improving lives of vulnerable people in our community is what's entrenched, and that's why partnerships matter. So really happy to be here at the launch today. There's a lot of work to do, and this is also helps form an accountability process and framework for us all. So the challenge from today is written, now we've got to see it implemented, and it will take courageous people in the Department of Community to really take this on board, and the community service sector. But a big congratulations to the department. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. And here are some partnerships we prepared earlier. So, inviting the Brains Trust, so Dr. Jenny Gray from WACOS and Dr. Kate Waddell from Communities. We wanted to give a couple of examples of partnerships in action. Partnerships are a little bit like innovation, just it's so overwhelming, do you ever actually do it? And then 10 years later, you haven't done anything. So this was about saying that you don't actually only have to solve the 10-year problem. Sometimes it's about coming, as Michelle said, sometimes it's about coming together to work on the smallest thing and just gain some success from that. So small but perfectly formed team of Jenny and Kate, just to talk about how this partnership is working.
Thank you. And apologies, I meant to get this up earlier, but it's one of those things that on the day the technical bits never quite go as planned. Yes, I'm Kate Waddell. I've lived and breathed this framework for the last 6 months, and I've been doing some close work with Jenny Gray in terms of trying to weave in a common language. I just want to also start by, if we're talking partnerships, I'm part of a very wonderful team of people who are here today, my colleagues Leah and Neve, and Justine. We have Rex, and I can't see Karen Irwin, who, oh, there she is. So without this whole team of people, our comms people, everybody else, this wouldn't necessarily be possible. We're a double act. Partnerships are about relationships, so I'm going to hand over to my partner in crime, Jenny, to do the next bit, and I'll be back later.
Oh yes, I'm only for a moment, just to say that we connected our work on a partnership continuum from thinking about why and how we establish partnerships to exploring how we might measure the effectiveness of partnerships. And because you did, Kate, I want to also say that I bring to our partnership a whole bunch of other people who are really cool too.
Yes. I forgot about the cool, my team.
Yeah,
as well. They're very, very cool people. So in terms of if we take what Rochelle was saying, if we take what Louise was saying, there's a nice big thread and narrative that goes through it. At communities, a lot of what we were doing was the how and the why. It's in our DNA. We do it on a daily basis. There's a lot of good things that people here do. Sometimes we're just not getting it done consistently, and some of the feedback that came through from a review by NAOS is that there needed to be essentially a brand communities when it came to partnerships, so that we had a common language, we had a rules of engagement, we had a bit of a hymn sheet to do, and we didn't want to go out and reinvent the wheel, because not only were we doing good stuff inside, people in the sector are doing good stuff as well, and there are also there's a lot of literature around partnerships. So it was about bringing all of that together and maybe reformatting the wheel so that the wheel fit, the tyres fit for the purpose that we needed to do. So it was a long consultation process with internal and external stakeholders to bring that together. And we didn't do it in isolation. We've talked about the partnership here, but we did do a lot of consultation with different people to come through, and it was an iterative process. And we've come up with developing a shared understanding and a shared language, and just as important is having that shared language with external partners, particularly with the sector, so that we're all working from the same page. So the framework, when you see it, has got a bit of a how-to, there's a why, sorry, let's start again. There's a why. Why do we do it as an agency? What is our vision? But why should we partner? What are the benefits of partnering? There's a bit about partnerships, and that's where the spectrum comes in, recognising that there are a lot of relationships, and depending on the type of activity you want to do, it might not be the full-blown high-end partnership, which is when you're going to bring together a lot of people to do a very complex piece of work. Jenny and I have been circulating around this bit, and that's been perfectly fine. And part of that was we agreed from the start what it is that we wanted to do and how we were going to do it. And that's where the framework also comes in, working with people to say, what is it we're trying to achieve? How do we want to go about doing it? Here's a bit of a how-to in terms of doing that. And we're slowly moving on here a lot this way, but I think Jenny's going to talk to that bit, so I'll step out and let Jenny step back in again.
Probably talk a bit more about how we're connecting on this. And this is really, I think this diagram that we co-designed with other colleagues as well is really where we met on our partnership journey, and I think we're probably a bit higher up here, Kate. So in the measurement we have a different
we do
different point of view.
Yeah.
So just very briefly, WACOS was contracted by the Health Department to assist looking at some of their partnerships as they implemented the recommendations out of the Sustainable Health Review, and our task was twofold in measuring partnerships. I'm just going to go back and say, so I think you're going to make the framework available today, is that?
It's going to go online today.
Yeah, okay. So the communities framework, you'll see, really starts with the why and how we establish partnerships, where the work that WACOS is doing with Sustainable Health Review is thinking about how we measure the effectiveness of those partnerships, since, as Michelle and Louise have pointed out, they're beginning with a premise that partnerships are a must for delivering services because it leads to better outcomes. So WACOS's work in the partnership space for Sustainable Health Review is to look at the effectiveness of partnerships across their governance structure, overseeing the implementation, but also to help health set some high-level partnership indicators that will tell us how well our partnerships are doing. And this is where the work comes in across government, as we're looking to develop some consistent indicators of what will tell us how we're going in our partnerships. So here's the thing though, measuring the effectiveness of partnerships is not always easy. So we can measure the partnership purpose. So is our intent and our vision for the partnership the same? Shared principles, yeah, we can measure that. what about our partnership processes? Are the right members in the partnership included, and have we got the appropriate communication mechanisms and resources to support the partnership? Yep, tick. Okay, here's the trick. Partnership achievements are not so easy to measure how well we've done. So we want to know if the partnership has resulted in better outcomes than if we were doing that work by ourselves. So does the total exceed the sum of the parts? And we don't want partnerships for partnership's sake. So what a good partnership looks like, well, and achieves, will depend a lot upon where we place our partnership, where we agree that we place our partnership on this partnership spectrum, and you'll all get to read the descriptors when you actually get the framework. And agreeing where the partnership is located on this partnership spectrum will set the expectations for what we're hoping to achieve out of the partnership. And as I said before, we're looking to establish some consistencies across across government and non-government about how we might measure partnerships. And this work, partnerships for partnerships, is of course ongoing and iterative.
And just a point on this, a snowball effect up and down this cycle. You might start here and move on. And one of the things that Jenny's talking about, the Sustainable Health Review work, our connection for this, she's now wrote me into working alongside with the Health Department and WAPA as well on this piece of work. So it's a bit of a snowball effect. This is part of a 2-pager. I put the other one up and I'll leave the other slide. There are copies of these available at the back of the room if you want to take one away with you, but everything is also going online later. Thank you.
Thank you. So, having been involved in a couple of meetings with the doctors, it's really exciting to see how much in furious agreement they are, and it's just another example of, we really do have so much more in common with each other than not. So it's been a real treat to see them bouncing off each other.
Ask us about injuries. We're not those kind of doctors.
Right, okay. So I've got this rash. That's what. Yeah, okay, maybe later. All right. What I'd like now to hand over is to Michelle McKenzie from Shelter and Marion Hells McDonald from the disabilities area of communities, again to talk about some recent very successful progress we've made in partnership working together.
And I'm sorry we're not colour coordinated. We're not in green and black.
I was just about to say, hopefully the mark of successful partnerships isn't that you are dressed in the same colours.
We just had someone picked up on it. We didn't plan
it. From my perspective is across the disability sector, we've had to do so much in partnership because it's the only way we would have managed to do what we had done. And that was very much so when I think about COVID coming along and the vulnerable people and standing up a task force, which was a total part of the respect and the relationships that have been developed over many years. So we had partnerships right across. But our most recent partnership is, and this shows the degree of trust, Michelle and I didn't know that we were going to be talking together, so she could say, is that it's fair to say that what we're working on at the moment is the specialist disability accommodation and seeking to secure as much funding into the state as we can do for specialist disability accommodation. Over the past 2 years, it's had a bit of a rocky start. And probably about 8 weeks ago now, we actually worked out how we were going to do this, and this was about partnership. It was about bringing, first of all, the lead agency, peak organisation from the community housing organisations together, lead peak agency from the disability organisations together and their representatives, and a few people from communities, and having some really clear purposes. And our intention is now to go out to the sector, but it was really important that what we did was actually, if we were going to have lots of disagreement, let's sort out our issues right at the beginning, because then we can go forward together. And I'm now going to hand to Michelle and say how she thinks it's worked or not.
Thanks for the opportunity. So it is really important. The delivery of housing to people with disabilities is really important, and it's a partnership that only works when the Department of Communities and our sector are in sync. And as you said, there's been a few rubs over the years, and I just want to congratulate Marion, because Marion very honest, very open, the opportunity to really talk about the issues in a positive constructive way, to kind of get all those niggly things that have been brewing for years out on the table and address them, and never ever lose sight of the end game, which is providing fantastic outcomes for people, fantastic housing outcomes. So it's been great as a peak body, bringing our members together, working with the superstar staff in the Department of Community, saying this is the end goal. Might be a bit twisty and turns, but let's get there, and let's get there together. And Jenny, the sum is greater than the parts in the partnership, so thank you.
And respecting each other's perspectives. And I'd also just give a shout out to Justine, who's been really instrumental in that as well. She was a partnership facilitator who came to the role while she actually has expertise in specialist disability accommodation. It was being very clear about what her role was in bringing people together, in that she was the partnership facilitator, and that was the way we worked forward. She wasn't there as a specialist disability accommodation provider. And hence, I would say that it's about, we agreed our purpose, we agreed our focus, we got all the little bits out on the table and worked out how we were going to work forwards in a bigger environment, because there are many more people that we need to bring along this journey. So, thank you.
And again, having been involved in the meetings, my observation from that would be there's a shared level of excitement when you bring good, smart, decent people together to solve common problems. You actually get people getting quite excited, going, how do we make this work? And that conquers the differences in every time. So my final thanks would go to the DG, Michelle, and to Karen, who is still there to go. I'm occupying two positions really, so I'm obviously the CEO of RISE normally and the Acting Director of Sector Partnerships here at the moment. A huge thank you to you both for giving me the opportunity to come in here. I have been blown away by how amazing the people in communities have been. I think people in the sector think I've drunk the Kool-Aid within 5 minutes, but all I'm doing is going, oh my gosh, people are amazing. I have been absolutely overwhelmed by how much people want to work with the sector. We have so much more in common than we have in difference. It's just, I think you mentioned in a previous meeting, Michelle, it's about just, or sometimes finding a bit of a translation tool more than anything, because there is very, very little difference in our values or where we want to be or how we want to be there. The more we can actually understand each other's perspectives, the better. This has been fantastic, and the relationships, even in 3 months, that you can build when you come inside the organisation are amazing. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So what we would like to do now is just a chance to talk to people from across the sectors, but we're also very keen to hear about any partnership ideas that you want. We deliberately gave a couple of sort of small but important examples, so that if you've got something you think, hey, I could just work on this, or there's a project going on here, who might I connect with? Myself, Kate, who is one of the doctors, Leah, who's at the back there, and Neve, who is also just putting a hand up, also conveniently dressed in green-ish, thanks. So we are all here to just bring your ideas to, if you, however big or small, and also just on the window to your left is where you can just write some notes of some ideas. So we undertake to document them and follow up, and we remain points of contact for any ideas. So our day job is just continually finding things happening either in the sector or in communities, going, how tweak that a little bit, and the answer every time I've asked anyone has always been yes. So now's your time to raise the issues. Thank you so much for coming along, and take the opportunity to find a partnership connection over a gluten-free biscuit. Yes, there we go, at the back. Yeah, add some ones with gluten if that's what we're doing. Thank you very much for coming, and please take the time to mingle.